Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome, welcome. So happy to have you here today. And I'm really excited about today's show. I am joined with Jeff Logheed from Meal Garden, and could not be more excited to introduce Jeff to all of you. Jeff, hello and welcome.
Hi, thanks, Leslie. It's great to see you again.
Great to
And
see you
and
too.
and hello to viewers and viewer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do want to welcome everyone that's joining us live, as well as those of you that are catching us on the replay. So big warm welcome to everyone. So let me give you just a quick overview in terms of what we're going to talk about today. So we got some really good stuff to share. So the title of today's session is Teach versus Tell. And basically, we're going to be talking about what your clients really want when they ask for a meal plan. And I can tell you, having come from, clinical nutrition work, as well as having my own nutrition private practice, we all know that we very often get asked for meal plans. So I think you're going to love what you learned today, and it's going to be incredibly helpful. So a few things that we're going to touch on. We are going to touch on, really significant ways that you guys can reduce your time, right? Because that's the biggest challenge with meal planning, right, guys? It is incredibly time consuming. Uh, that being said, the public wants meal plans. So we do need to deliver, right? I know there's probably some of you watching today that are like, oh, I just avoid meal plans like the plague just because it's so time consuming. Um, but I do want to encourage you to revisit that mindset because it is important. I would say most clients out there, they really do want and they frankly expect meal plans. So it is super important that we deliver. And you're going to learn how to make it so much easier for your clients and your patients, your customers to achieve the goals that they are yearning for, right? So we're going to teach you some strategies on how to help you help your clients more efficiently and effectively. And you're also going to get exposure to some new and fun ways to grow your business. All right. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. For those of you that don't know me, welcome. My name is Leslie Vitel, and I'm a business coach and consultant. I work specifically with coaches and dietitians, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, anyone in the private practice realm. Work with lots of folks in the integrative and functional nutrition area. And what I do is help you to overcome a lot of those inherent obstacles that you're facing when it comes to growing a profitable business, right? So all of you, I'm guessing, are pretty well versed and well trained in your craft, and rightly so. You've really invested lots of time, energy, and focus on really becoming an expert in your specific area. So what I do is I fill that gap, that entrepreneurial gap, right? I help you take your knowledge and bundle it all up and create a super exciting and profitable practice. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, why don't we kick things off by you sharing a little bit about yourself? And you've got a really interesting background. So maybe share a little bit about you and kind of your journey.
So thanks, Leslie. I think, as I mentioned before, it's always great to talk to you. I think we share a lot of things in common in terms of our journeys to here. My journey started out in enterprise software, and specifically in enterprise software, working in a vertical industry. So I worked for a company called Constellation, which owned a company called Trapeze, and it was just really exciting, high growth organization, a lot of fun, did the whole going public and all these kinds of things. And I think, the thing that really drove me to that, and I think I really learned from that, was partnering and helping people with solutions, right? So when I exited Trapeze, I connected with Vlad Chernenko, who's my co-founder, who's working in this industry to build a solution to help practitioners better meet their clients' needs, right? And it was really built a lot around meal planning and specifically around meal delivery. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and I'm really drawn to spaces where there's a greater good involved, right? So it's something that's really important. And I started working with Vlad, and I just really fell in love with what we're doing here, and I started to recognize just opportunities to help. And I saw a post yesterday or a couple of days ago from you on email where it says 90% failure rate in this specific space, right? And I think that's a big number. That's something that we can not necessarily talk about, but I was like, okay, that's problematic, right? Like, this is one of the most important, if you look at healthcare in general and conditions and all these things, like, there's 400 million people in North America and there's under 100,000 practitioners. Like, I don't know, there must be a disconnect here, right? And what Vlad was really working on is how can we help practitioners? I love that you mentioned the craft. And what we really kind of focus on is how can we make the craft easier, and how can we help practitioners incorporate their craft into business development efforts, right? So this is kind of where our journey started. And I worked with Vlad, we've built a team over here at Meal Garden, and are just really trying to think about how do we make it easier for practitioners to incorporate their craft? How do we make it easier for practitioners to kind of meet their clients where they eat, right? So how do we look at, meal planning is an age-old kind of process. And I think, even back in the early 1900s, people were writing out meal plans. But is meal planning really the same today as it was back then? And if you look at it, even some of the tools that are out there today, they've really just automated an existing process, right? So what I think Vlad and I brought to the table and was exciting is like, how do we re-envision this, and how do we make it so it's easier for practitioners to, again, meet their clients where they eat? And along this journey, I did graduate studies in executive coaching as well, which gave me some really good insight into cognitive capabilities and how to help people change. And one thing about humans is we don't really like being told what to do. No matter what our condition is, being told what to do, your immediate reaction to that in a lot of cases is no. You can't tell me what to do.
That wall, right?
Exactly. So I think that there's a really a big opportunity in this industry to kind of help our clients understand and make their own decisions, and help them to build those behaviors around healthy eating, and again, just really make it really easy to get that going. I think some of the things that we've heard and projects that we've done is it takes 5-6 hours to build an effective meal plan sometimes, right? And that, when you look at your business overall, that's sucking up a lot of time that you would have for other things. So we're like, well, how can we make that more effective? And then how can we also help practitioners to easily incorporate that, incorporate their craft into what they do? So, most practitioners are operational, not necessarily, great or trained in sales and marketing. So how do we bridge those things? How do we pull those things together to make it comfortable to sell and comfortable to build those relationships? And maybe, selling is really helping, and everybody wants to help, right? So it's just changing those mindsets and those kinds of things. That's kind of how I got to where I am.
I love that. Meet your client where they eat. Where did that come from? That's it. I mean, it's simple, but it's just so true. Like, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I think it came from just talking to practitioners and kind of also just looking at all the things going on in this space, right? The healthcare space itself is very dynamic, but in nutrition, you're actually in the middle of a lot of different things. You're in the middle of grocery stores, food delivery, restaurants. So, I think one of my favorite stories, and this is kind of where it came from. I was talking to Diana, who works in Florida. She had a client who needed some help, had a condition, and his only requirement was, I have burritos at work for lunch, and I'm not changing that.
I'm not giving that up.
I'm not changing them. So what she did was she actually went to the place where they created the burritos, entered the burrito makeup into Meal Garden, and then was able to show her client, okay, if this is what you're going to do for lunch, these are your goals, and this is how we adjust the rest of your days to kind of compensate for that. And that's where the idea of meet your client where they eat comes from, right? Like, change is hard, but it's better to do it incrementally, as well as letting the client to make their own decisions, right? So asking the questions, actively listening, these kinds of things, but letting the client make their own decisions and really just supporting them and providing them the knowledge that they need, right? So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, and what you're describing is so key. It really is I think it describes the big difference between the coaching approach as compared to the practitioner, basically what we all learned in school, right, as practitioners, right?
Yeah.
And that really, I think, brings us back to the topic for today: teach versus tell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's
that.
So the idea of teach versus tell, I think, is it's a progression, right? Like I think executive coaching in its own right is kind of a very young in the terms of the greater experiences. We're just really learning about cognitive capabilities and how people think. So everything you learned in school is 100% accurate. It's how you deliver that and how you engage your clients. And what we found, on our team, we decided early on we're gonna have a blog, or we're gonna have a podcast actually called Making It Real. And the podcast is really focused on speaking to practitioners and understanding how they succeed, right? And sharing that with other practitioners and creating collaboration spots. So what we started to find time and time again is the practitioners that are very successful and are very successful with, not only with Meal Garden, but their businesses, they take approach of teaching, right? They take the approach of, this is about you and I'm here to help you. So how do I help you? How do I guide that behavior? And meal plans, I think sometimes when people ask for a meal plan, it's that whole concept of, and I know you do this in sales, right? The Sandler approach, like why? So when people ask for a meal plan, that's not necessarily what they're asking for. What they're looking for is, I think a meal plan is going to help me feel better. You're like, okay, well, what's going to help you feel? What is it? Where are you not feeling well? And okay, so let's start building these things together. If you build a meal plan with a client, they're 4 or 5 times more likely to adhere to that plan than is if you just give it to them, right? Because they're engaged and they're understanding that, right? Of course, I don't think you necessarily expect your client to understand macro balances and all this stuff that but you can provide this information to them in a way that, how are you feeling 3 weeks after they've adopted the plan? And hey, look at the changes that you've had. So this idea of really teaching, and I think most practitioners are really well suited for that approach, and the ones that have adopted that are being very, very successful.
Yeah, why do you think that is? I'm just sort of curious on your take. Is it because they have content and they're able to elongate that interaction with the client or patient? Or can you put your finger on exactly what that is? Why that helps them in business?
So why it helps them in business? So I think we do business with people that we like.
Yeah.
I think that if you're in, so there's a term that comes out of executive coaching, right? That everybody, and I'm pretty sure you've heard this, kind of a DNA of a human being is to be seen, heard, and understood in all aspects of life. So number one, if you take kind of a teacher's approach, to teach someone something, you kind of have to understand where they are and where they're going, right? So to be seen, heard, understood. I think the other part of this is, and I don't necessarily know if practitioners that are being successful with the teacher approach are aware of this, but cognitively speaking, and again, I have a graduate degree in cognitive coaching. So cognitive speaking, to create wrinkles in your brain, to create that memory, it's actually easier to ask questions and have your student or the client actually come up with that answer, right? So if somebody asks you for a meal plan, you can say, oh, great, we can do all kinds of meal planning. What is it you're hoping to achieve with a meal plan, right? And then you're kind of digging deeper, and what you might get to is what they're trying to do is they're trying to feel healthier, feel better, and you're like, well, is that a meal plan, or is that maybe for me to recommend or help you understand different things you're eating to kind of help balance out your day or bring that feeling around, right? So it's really that idea of asking and then telling, or it's even after you ask the question, you're actually just really guiding and kind of co-creating solutions, right? So
Right.
ideas of listening to the body, right? Listening to your body, right? So you get people, I know there's a practitioner, Lisa, who her whole thing is let them eat the cake. And her whole thing is like, if I tell you not to do something, that immediately is creating in your kind of lizard brain, you're like, well, I'm an adult. What do I mean I can't do that?
Yeah.
She turns it around and says, how do you feel after you did that? I
Brilliant.
don't feel very good. Okay. Well, just do what you want to do, but if your goal is to feel good, maybe have one piece of cake instead of three, or maybe offset that steak with a lot of salad, right? So this is really kind of helping people get in tune with their bodies and kind of taking that approach. And again, I'm not necessarily sure if all practitioners understand the kind of executive coaching element to it, but from what we've heard and what we've spoken to, they're actually doing this kind of thing. And just really active listening is another kind of aspect to it, right?
It's so interesting. Like at the most basic level, from what I'm hearing, when someone asks for a meal plan, like I think in many cases the normal response would be, sure, let me create that for you, right? Let me do that for you. And so I think what you're saying is like probe a little, right? Like what are you hoping the meal plan will do for you, right? Just really instead of just taking things at face value and kind of running with it, pausing and just asking a few questions around it, right? And then the client hears themselves respond. And that's where the powerful transformations begin to happen, right?
That's really where it is. And it's this idea of being successes have been related to just being curious, right? Not annoyingly curious, although early on, I'm sure people at companies I've worked with are like, you gotta ask a lot of questions, but just being curious, like what is it? What do you think a meal plan is going to achieve? Like, what's your goal from that, right? And then also asking the reverse questions, right? So leaning in, what's going to get in your way of following this?
Right.
What might not, right? So really using those questions to kind of drive the conversation to get to that bottom line. And sometimes the bottom line is like, they're like, I'm looking for a sidekick. I'm looking for someone to kind of coach me towards this better behavior. And the great thing, once you establish a relationship with someone, all kinds of things start going off, right? Like it's not only do they always want to stay connected and stay part of your community or your tribe, but also they're going to talk a lot more.
All right, guys, let's hope Jeff comes back. Let's see. Hey, Jeff, can you hear me? Okay. Good old technology, right, guys? Never a dull moment with tech. Had a very bizarre week myself last week with technology. Seriously, it was kind of crazy. We were in actually Birmingham, Michigan over the weekend and much of the week as well. And kind of the same thing, just like all of a sudden lost internet, even had difficulty with cell phone, which is kind of nutty. So let's see if Jeff comes back. Let's see here. Hopefully he will. So let's just stand by. So guys, I want to elaborate just a little bit on this concept. Well, here's Jeff. Hey, you're back.
I'm so sorry about that.
Technology. I was just sharing that last week was a bizarre tech week for me. Like, like it was just strange. Had all kinds of tech issues. So welcome back. I was just starting to talk a little bit about, going a little deeper into that concept of tell versus teach and just how, just taking a pause, because I know what it's like to be that practitioner and like someone asks a question and you just immediately like, okay, let me do it, right? And it's just such an interesting thing when you train yourself to pause and ask a couple questions. it just catapults the experience. And I think what we were talking about when we got disconnected is, the client actually hears themselves respond, which is a therapeutic process,
Yep.
right? It is almost like therapy in a way. They hear themselves, which is incredibly helpful for their journey forward.
Yeah, and it promotes, so that anxiety to always, like you see that in healthcare so much, and I see it in a lot of different places. In fact, I'm sure for those of us that came out of kind of a corporate environment, just people jumping with answers before you're even done talking, right?
Yeah.
You see that all the time. You see people, you can actually see in people's eyes that their listening has gone off. They've got the answer and they're ready to throw it at you.
Yeah.
So it's really actually exciting and much more comfortable to take a few breaths and just really be curious, right? Like, what is, let's talk about that, or tell me more, or then you kind of get into these like power questions, right? Like how or what, or creating visions and things like that. So, but that active listening is easier said than done sometimes.
Super powerful. Yeah, and it does take practice, without a doubt.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
let's change gears just a little bit. So I've heard of meal solutions before, the concept. But isn't that just a different way of saying meal plans? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that there's some truth to that, but I believe meal solutions is kind of the direction that I see practitioners moving, in the sense that a meal plan is very prescriptive.
Yeah.
And whereas a meal solution is much more flexible and more cooperative, right? So a meal solution is, in my mind, kind of combines those ideas of meeting people where they eat, right? So a meal solution may include some recipes. It may include takeout meals. It may include pre-made things from a grocery store, right, which is big. And a meal solution is really tailored towards, it includes a lot more of the cognitive components or feelings, right? Which, like feelings, like how do you feel? So a meal plan is generally, here's a plan, here's 7 days, 10 days, whatever. Did you or did you not do that? A meal solution is, here are your options. Let's work together to build a schedule, right? For as long as you want. And let's make sure that this reflects in real life, right? So, and again, I like this idea of these practitioners. Some of our practitioners will actually ask clients where they eat. Like, where do you grocery shop? Well, I grocery shop at HEB, for example. Okay, well, I'll go there and I'll find some of their pre-made meals. So on an evening where you have dancing and soccer with your kids, I know and you know that you're not going to have a lot of time. So let's pick a pre-made meal from HEB, which is right up the street from you, that you can take home. You can throw it in your oven. It'll be ready to go. You can feed and go, and you're still achieving those goals, right? So I think meal solutions are a little more comprehensive. And, again, I see that's the way the industry is kind of moving.
So interesting. Do you have any examples in practice? Anything, you can kind of walk us through?
Yeah, so I think like the two best examples that I've seen, and there's kind of so let's talk about two examples. Number one is we have Katie, and Katie works with autoimmune, right? And autoimmune is very complex, right? So there's a lot of things in the autoimmune deficiency or the autoimmune conditions where medications that need to be involved, like doctor type stuff, right? But there's also a lot of myths around this, that you need to go vegan, or you need to do paleo, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. Very prescriptive. Katie's approach is to tie into the human being and kind of just help them move along that path, right? And what she's found is, towards the end of the conversation, the first thing that her clients say is like, well, give me some ideas, right? And so what she does is she kind of uses the technology she has. She packages up the ideas and provides this tool for them to actually do their own scheduling, right? So we're moving from planning to scheduling, which is
so key.
It's a word that, it's a different word, and just those little words make a huge difference for people that are struggling or people that are looking for solutions, right? So she switches that from planning to scheduling, and then through her conversation, she can actually see, kind of tie in with what her client's doing, right? So she can look and say, hey, you scheduled these two things, but it doesn't look like you actually did that. What happened? Well, I got busy, and then you get into the coaching conversation, which is really fun. You're like, oh, you got busy. Okay. Well, was it unplanned? Was it planned? To kind of dive into that and kind of really kind of help them and be, okay, so next time, what are you going to do when this arises, well, I'm going to actually schedule something that I pick up because I know I can do that. And okay, is that meal in do you have access to the nutritional value of that meal? I don't have yet, but I know the person at the restaurant. I can go and ask them, and then I can incorporate it. Like, oh, now you're building behaviors. Now you're empowering the client to kind of move in the right direction. And that empowerment, I believe, our clients that have been struggling for a long time feel helpless. Like that's one of the number one things, right? They feel helpless. So how do you empower them to make those changes on their own? And there's nothing better than for a practitioner. I believe, from listening to speaking with Katie as well as listening to her podcast, there's nothing more empowering or pleasurable for her when a client comes in and is like, this is what I scheduled this week. I actually achieved it and I feel great. And what I'm looking for is I'm actually learning to cook. So I need something a little more spicy, a little more fun. And I'm starting to enjoy the kitchen and I'm enjoying the scheduling process and thinking ahead. Like, even if you think ahead, like some people only think ahead to the next meal, right? Like you wake up, you're like, I need to have breakfast. Well, what am I going to eat? Well, okay, what do you got in your cupboards, right? And you're like, and that's some of those things are things you just can't change. So what you need to do is meet them where they eat or be there when they're making that decision. So they kind of go to their device and they click a button and they have three things that fit the kind of agreement, the goals that you set up with them, and boom, away they go. So that's an example of Katie. And I think I mentioned Lisa earlier, but she's kind of the same idea. And her kind of tagline is let them eat the cake. But her approach is to just help talk to people about how they feel. Right? How do you feel after a weekend away, like say a cottage? Like I think cottaging or cabbaging is you get into the hot dogs and the marshmallows and all these kinds of things that, aren't necessarily terrible, but your body's going to behave differently. And she takes advantage of those coaching moments to kind of talk to her clients about, okay, well, how did you feel? And okay, well, what will you do differently next time? Or would you do anything differently next time? So these kinds of things, really helping them build those, the wrinkles in their brain to kind of figure it out on their own.
Yeah, I love that. So I know this isn't about Meal Garden per se, but it does make me curious in terms of the platform and how it can help practitioners achieve these, better results.
Yeah, so I think
if you don't mind sharing a little bit.
No, I obviously I love talking about Meal Garden. I don't like to. So it's teach versus tell, right? So I think teaching is the great thing about Meal Garden is it's a companion app. So you can open up Meal Garden, you can create a view for your client that's filtered just to their specific needs, and you can literally open up Meal Garden, click on your client, see your client's calendar, and you can sit and interactively talk with them and build things out and kind of just make it really easy. I think the other interesting thing about Meal Garden, the thing that gets me excited about Meal Garden is we're kind of thinking, first of all, we took a first principles approach to meal planning and how we built the product. And we're like, so when we first heard about meal planning, we're like, man, what is that? And okay, so how do we make this so that the practitioners are actually achieving their goals, which is to help their clients and grow their businesses. So that's kind of how we stepped back and said, okay, in today's world, you got to meet your client where they eat. So we got to make it easy to ingest different types of foods. So pre-made meals, restaurant meals, these kinds of things. And then we also need to make it really easy for the client to engage. So like one of our goals is to make the client access, the mobile access, better than a PDF, right? So that's one of our 2022 goals is make it better than a PDF, because that's kind of the go-to capabilities now. And then as well as that, looking at Meal Garden and saying, okay, so lead magnets. This is a big thing. Lead magnets, I know you talk about Meal Garden, and you have it's great content. It's all great content. Does a lead magnet as a PDF in the 20th century or today, does that make sense? And from what you're really trying to do as a practitioner is build relationships, right? So what we see a lot of users of Meal Garden doing is creating dynamic content, right? And engaging audiences, which I think, I'm pretty sure a term that you're familiar with, right? The difference between an audience and a client. An audience is a whole group of people that are interested in what you're talking about,
right?
But may not necessarily be ready to engage in a one-on-one dialogue, but they want to learn and they want to live a better life. So, really making it so that you have this kind of interactive approach to developing your audience in a fun way, right? So back to what you said earlier on, that craft and what you're taught and learned is about that craft. How do we make it easy for a practitioner to incorporate their craft into their business development exercises? And then as you know, the next step is build relationships, keep the conversation going. That was a term that I used in our sales force back in the day, was keep the conversation going, right? Like just keep adding value. I like HubSpot, you know, it's always be helping, right? Just keep adding value and keep helping. And you're going to find people will move along this path to engagement where they're going to knock on your door, right? And I think one of the things I noticed with these online communities is a lot of people that want help, they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed. They don't want to raise their hand. They don't want to walk into a clinic. They're not there yet. But if you're the one helping them get to that point, you're going to be top of mind and they're going to engage with you, right? So those are some of the philosophies that we apply to the platform. And you know, for us, we're always listening to. So I think I have a goal of speaking to 15 to 20 clients a week with my co-founder, which is, you know, next week I think it'll probably be a little harder. But as just talking and learning and you know, hearing what clients say, hey, we need to be able to do this, and just incorporating that. And we're also looking beyond like that idea of meet people where they eat. So what we really are working on doing is partnering with food sources, right? Like partnering with food sources, partnering with places so that you have more flexibility and a larger group of, so you can meet people where they eat, right?
I love that concept. Yeah, and next week might be a little tough, right? You're in Canada, so a little different there, but here in the States, pretty much everyone shuts down.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, I think it's a big week for this week and last week, and probably the week after is a big week to get those kind of interactive lead magnets going, because people are going to be looking for, like, everybody's going to feel a lot of people will be like, oof, that was a big week. And I think this is a special Thanksgiving, right? To celebrate over previous Thanksgivings and kind of all the things we're dealing with, right? So
let me ask you a quick question. In terms of lead magnets, how can Meal Garden help with that process?
Yeah, so we provide, you can, again, incorporating a craft into your lead magnets. So Meal Garden has a concept of programs or packages where you can actually put resources, you can put plans, collections, and you can provide audiences or groups of audiences restricted access to your Meal Garden, right? So the difference between a lead magnet, between traditional lead magnets is it's interactive, right? So it's fully branded.
Okay.
And your client doesn't give you an email and download a PDF. They engage with the site, and then you can start to see some really interesting things, right? So maybe you've done a really good job and you have 100 to 200 people engaged in this post-Thanksgiving program. What you can actually do is you can start to see who are the most engaged, right? Like who's doing the most, and then those people you can kind of reach out to with tailored programs. Be like, hey, I would love to have a conversation. I'd love to learn more about what you're doing. And those people have a higher likelihood to engage. On the flip side, if nobody's engaging with your content, that's great data too, right? It's just an opportunity to learn. You're like, okay, what do I have to do differently, right?
I love that. And Jeff, it's something that I talk about a lot. Anyone that knows my work knows that I'm always kind of nudging my clients and my students, my audience to, not sit and wait for that phone to ring, right? Especially when they're new. It's so important. And I love that strategy so very much, where, you're able to identify your most engaged people in your audience, right? And you reach out to them, you engage back, you reach out, you reach out and say, hey, I'd love to have a chat with you, would you mind getting on a quick Zoom call? I'd love to learn more about you. And you can't go wrong with that.
That's 100% the whole focus.
So I'm going to keep talking on that concept, guys, because I think that Jeff might be having some tech issues on his end. But I really do want to encourage you. Like, this is a strategy that you can use in a Facebook community, in a course. Let's say you've got, he's back. You've got an online course, you've got a Facebook group, you've got, I mean, even on Instagram, on the platform, on Meal Garden, wherever you are, anyone that, you pick out your superstars, right? And seriously, just reach out, and it's like a no strings attached. It's not a sales call, right? It's, hey, you know
Mhm.
what? I really want to learn more. And I love what Jeff mentioned earlier about approaching things from curiosity.
Yeah.
I think that's super key, because so often we get really hung up on, oh, what am I going to say? I don't know the language, right? I don't know what to say. And it's just from the heart. You're just curious.
That's I think that's the number one strength of any successful entrepreneur. So I think we're all entrepreneurs, and selling
Yeah.
is part of your toolbox. The number one thing is be curious,
Yeah.
and and from there it goes to being helpful, right? So
Yeah.
your curiosity will lead you to a point where you can be very helpful in a very specific way for that specific person, right? So, and
Yeah.
then for me, it's keep the conversation going. If like the more conversations you have, the more you're going to learn about your market and your audience, and the more you're going to be able to create compelling content and really help, right? So
Yes.
you got to put yourself in their shoes. And I know a lot of practitioners, their journey starts right with being in those shoes. So that's a help already, but it's really important to kind of
It
keep
is.
that curiosity going. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, if, let's see, let's take a peek at comments. Let's see. Okay, so let's just take a quick pause, Jeff, and see what our audience has to say. All right, so unfortunately, we can't see who you are, Facebook user. Facebook is a little strict when it comes to sharing names. But nonetheless, I was able to pop on the live session. I find myself always running away when they ask about meal plans. And I just wanted to say, you are so not alone. Okay, full confession. I used to do the same thing. Okay, all the time. Seriously. When I had my practice, honestly, there was no meal garden. Okay. So I would seriously just avoid it. And I would say something like, well, my goal is that you know how to do your own meal plans, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of, which, honestly is not half bad. But honestly, a lot of times people, they just want it, right? They want ideas. And especially if you're not super culinary, if you don't have that orientation, this
Mm-hmm.
part honestly can be very challenging. Like for myself, I would say I'm more clinically oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know we've got lots of folks out there that have more like a culinary skills. But anyway, point is, I totally hear you. I was the same way. I used to run away from it too. And now you feel like you actually have some tools to address them with your clients, which is great. And I'd be curious what the feedback is. If you can share in the comments or the chat, like how have you seen your practice transform as a result? And how, most importantly, how is this impacting the transformations that your clients are experiencing? So if you wouldn't mind, I'm super curious about that. Let's see here. Yeah, and what do you think, Jeff? What are your comments on that?
So as listening to what you're saying, I think it's an interesting conversation, Leslie, might be to focus in on why you ran away. Like, what was it? What
Yeah.
was it about meal plans that made you turn away? I think that's actually an interesting conversation.
I honestly, I feel like all right, a little embarrassing, but I honestly, I didn't even think I knew how to do it anymore. I mean, I was like, I don't know, like it's bizarre.
Okay.
But I have, I've confessed that to people before, and they're like, oh yeah, I got it. I don't know. I just was like, I don't even know what to do exactly.
No, I got
Like,
it.
is this like a meal plan? Like when I worked in a hospital, right? Like
Mhm.
you do like, like a 1800 ADA kind of a meal plan. Is that what we're talking about? Like, I don't know. It just, but I have to say the other part was, it just like the time. Like I really didn't want to take the time to learn it.
Mhm.
I just did,
Mhm.
I just had a huge wall of resistance. to going there, and I don't know what it was all about.
No, I think so. Do you have a? So I'm going to switch from coach to kind of consult.
Yeah.
Like if someone asked you,
Yeah.
if someone asked you for what was your somebody asked you for a meal plan,
Yeah.
or even better, you mentioned you're clinically oriented. So in the clinical environment, if somebody asked you for this, what did you provide? Like what was it that you would generally provide?
I would try to, like, I did quite a bit with like food sensitivities, and so I would try to dig out recipes, that fit the bill, but it never really felt very cohesive. And honestly, it always felt, I'll be really honest with you. This is the truth. I felt like this was a big weakness for me. Like I felt like, okay, from a clinical standpoint, I felt like I felt good about behavior change, right? Like really good having coach training, and really good in terms of, I mean, not that we can diagnose as dietitians, but like, the testing and getting people the answers that they needed. But seriously, I did not feel great about the actual doing it part when it came to food. It was a real kind of an issue. It was a challenge for me, right? So what did I do? I would research recipes, right? And I would look into the ingredients, and especially people with food sensitivities. So I did a lot with mindful eating too, and mindful eating strategies. So what the work that I did was much more oriented around listening to your body and really paying close attention to how foods make you feel. And so I think that was also kind of a handy way of kind of avoiding meal plans. So hopefully Jeff will pop back in. So Stacy, when Jeff pops in, we will ask him about this. If a client has food sensitivities, can we plug those in so they can pull recipes that don't have those specific ingredients? We'll find out what Jeff has to say. I'd be curious to know, guys. Can you guys comment? Tell me how you handle that question of meal plans. Do you do meal plans? Like, what do you do about that? I'd really love to hear from you. Can you guys relate to how I used to feel? I just used to feel like it was a deficit. So we have a question. Stacy wants to know, if a client has food sensitivities, like how do you manage that with the platform?
So first off, my face is red. It's because I'm really frustrated with the internet. I pay a premium for this space, so I really apologize.
Do not worry. This is a stress-free zone. So seriously, don't worry. We'll do it again sometime when you have, a better internet. But don't worry, everyone. I think everyone here can relate. Like I said, I lost internet last week at the most inopportune time. It was like ridiculous. And then my wonderful VA Abby filled in, right? And then she's in the Canary Islands, and then she lost internet. It's like, okay, the world is. The stars are not aligning today, so don't worry about it. So what do you think?
Yeah, if I can, you were clinical orientation and a cohesive plan, and the idea is with Meal Garden is let's not think about meal planning, right? Let's think of meal solutions. From a clinical perspective, you can talk about food sensitivities. You can set up what I like to refer to as guardrails, right? So you can set up nutritional values, highs and lows, these kinds of things. So you can, and then you to do the work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very easy to use. That's our core focus is ease of use and these kinds of things. But I think that's the most important thing. And one of the things that we're really excited about is talking more to clinicians and talking more because people need this.
They do.
But there's an opportunity to change the conversation from planning to solutions and kind of align it more with what we learn from a clinical perspective in terms of, I don't want to just tell you what to do, but I can give you a broad sense of this. And then you can also connect, right? Keeping that connection. Because what happens once they leave the inpatient program or once they leave that program, how do they, like that, people are scared of that, right? In some ways. So you can actually turn that into kind of that quasi-passive income, I would say, or memberships.
Oh, it's oh my God, maintenance. Like it's a huge untapped opportunity for every single person on this call. Just, the concept of serving your clients. I mean, guys, seriously, it could over the period of years, especially with the work that you all do, because we do know that people need that accountability and support over the long term. And they may not need, actual one-on-one time with you at a certain point. So really, that absolutely resonates for me very, very highly, Jeff. So so one other thing I wanted to mention, and I can speak to this because in my own practice, I kind of struggled with this. So a lot of my work eventually became more functionally oriented, right? Doing the lab tests and, working with really complex patients with neurological disorders, multiple sclerosis, that sort of thing. But I also had an arm of my practice that was focused on more of the mindful eating approach, like anti-diet, right? And I think one of the challenges that some of us do face is like, well, how do you, because with mindful eating, it's really more how does food make you feel, right? And it's not putting a cap on, of course, calories. Like you're really learning to tune into your internal hunger and fullness cues to help you to self-regulate, right? What to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, all of those things. So how do you do that with, a software such as yours?
So like some of the things are kind of anthropometric based, and I think the other thing is capturing like that concept of in 20.
So while we're waiting for Jeff to pop back in, oh yeah, go ahead. I was just going to put the link. We had Carrie ask, is there a test plan we can look at? And Carrie, we'll talk about that in just a second, but I wanted to give you guys the link. Okay, so you cut out just for a little bit, Jeff, when we were talking about the mindful eating thing.
So there's two things there. One is the idea of kind of this idea of journaling and kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
To capture that information. And then talking, like literally just coaching through with your clients. The other idea is resources, right? So even just showing, and this is one of the agenda, I was on the phone with the creative services team before this meeting, and one of their objectives for 2022 is to create more kind of off-the-shelf resources in Meal Garden that you can just grab and share with your clients. So this idea of portion control, what does a portion look like, right? Like what does that look like? And just kind of providing those guardrails and that information in a very easy way. So, Meal Garden has a little leaf that kind of acts as a really easy for clients to engage and as well as, and then there's kind of things around celebrations, right? So if you actually booked your meal, let's throw some confetti, which people love. And I think it's great too.
So a lot of celebrating wins. So positive feedback, which is great.
Certainly always focus on positive feedback. And then if something didn't work, don't focus on it not working. Focus on what do we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, okay, guys. So I put the link for Meal Garden on your screen. And I do want to let you know really quick. Let's see here. Okay. Is Jeff back?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Who knows?
There. So it sounds like there's tools that are appropriate for practitioners that don't want to be, like counting calories or like really limiting macronutrients and that sort of thing. It sounds like I heard you say guardrails, which is awesome. So that's great. Guys, I put the link bit.ly/meal garden. And what this is going to do for you, if you use this particular link, you can get 30 days complimentary. Is that right, Jeff? With the bit.ly/meal garden link. Guys, this is case sensitive. It's a shortened link, so make sure you capitalize the M and the G in meal garden. And then you can also get 50% off of the membership over what's the duration, Jeff?
It's 2 months, and the purpose of this is again to meet you where you are as a practitioner. Adopting new technology is like we live stressful lives already, so we're really trying to make it very easy for you to ramp up the introduction of a technology and really understand how to use it. So in that program, you'll have access to all kinds of interesting things that we're doing, but the goal is to not add stress to your life.
Yeah.
And also to make it really comfortable for you to have the time to understand how to drive value out of the software and also how to introduce it to your audience. So just make it, the world is stressful enough, so.
Yeah, so this is amazing. Any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share as we start to wrap up? I know it's a big question. Any final words that you want to share with the audience today, Jeff?
I think thanks for all your hard work. Like I think everyone on this call is having a tremendous impact on our communities and the world at large. And Meal Garden, our goal is to help you succeed and grow. So I thank you for all your work, and thanks for sharing this the time with us.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It was great to connect with you all. Thanks for being here with us. And so next week here in the States, next Thursday, of course, is the Thanksgiving holiday. So we will not be going live next week. I will be with friends and family in Long Grove, Illinois, eating lots of turkey and just hanging out. So, but I will see you the following week, everybody. So safe travels to everyone. I hope you all have a really nice holiday weekend. Take time for some R&R, and looking forward to seeing you. I think that's the first week of December. All right. So we'll see you back, same place, same time. All right. Until then, bye for now.
Thanks so much, Leslie. Take care, everyone.
Bye.